I'm Blake Hargreaves. Welcome to Future Stops. You're hearing the enigmatic music of the late Iannis Xenakis, a widely performed 20th century composer whose 100th birthday was just celebrated in Paris with an exhibition and multiple concerts. Xenakis, whose experimental use of mathematics and architecture in composing music anticipated so much of the 21st century, and whose musical scores can be baffling to even the most seasoned interpreter, wrote a work for pipe organ that still to this day stretches the capabilities of the performer and the organ itself. Organist Suanne Kujala was chosen to perform this work at the recent celebrations in Paris.
I'm actually, my first instrument was the classical accordion, and then I wanted to play piano, so then after a while it was possible to play piano. I always loved the organ and had some cassettes at that time, tapes, tapes, right, at that time, and for example, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach was my absolute favorite, and of course Johann Sebastian, but for some reason it was also his son. And so I just told my mother one day, I find the organ quite cool. I just go to the cantor and ask if he can give you a lesson. So it started like that. It was very fun. I was 13 at the time.
And did you play in church or pursue a more academic route with the organ?
No, at that time, I just played in the church, of course, and but later I started the organ again, and finally I took doctoral studies, and my thesis, or how to say, thing was organ as an instrument for contemporary music.
And what was your reaction the first time you heard the music of Iannis Xenakis?
Actually, I loved the piece. Yeah. I got to know the score and the music already during my studies, but when I heard it the first time, I was in Paris. It was in Saint-Eustache Church when Francesco Filide played it at the 2009, the year 2009, and I think it was a great performance. But I still was on the opinion I would never play that piece because I think it's not written very well.
Why do you feel that way about it?
If you see the score and it's not possible to play like the score indicates. You would need like maybe 4 hands or 5, and so he didn't make really a playable word. It's not idiomatic for playing. It's a score like only the music. And he and in my opinion, it's a kind of hybrid. If you think of this work as a work for organ, he went into the registration, yes, and one organist also recorded all stops for him. So he really thought about what is sounding at what place. I think the registration is also very, very interesting, and it's one of the parts which make this work so impressive. But I was first on the opinion when I heard and saw the score first time that I was actually a little bit angry for him that he didn't bother to think about how is this possible to play on an organ. Later on, I spoke with my husband, who's also a composer, and he said that maybe he was just waiting for new possibilities in the future. And one possibility can be what we did actually 1 year ago when I played in Helsinki. We pre-recorded some parts of the score, which is not possible to grab, or how to say, and then we played it at the same time then while I played the rest of it. So this would be this kind of possibility to play it so that everything is coming out like it should be. I know that some people also play with an assistant, but it really needs much time for practicing, and also I find it a little bit difficult because the lines go sometimes from very low to very high. Then you should probably cut the lines. The first player plays and then the other player. So it becomes a piece for two organists, actually, in my opinion. It's not a solo piece then anymore.
This notoriously difficult piece by Xenakis continues to challenge countless performers around the world since its publication in 1974. Eun-Joo Ju is an organist at Presbyterian Home and Kenilworth Union Church in Illinois. Her keen interest in this work led to her choosing it as the subject for her thesis studies.
The purpose of my thesis to explore Xenakis' work, GMEEOORH only work. And actually this work is based on the use of his own compositional technique, which is called arborescence. And through this technique, he kind of achieved the continuity and discontinuity. And also he kind of pushed the limits of the color and timbre coming from organ. And not only that, he kind of required the organist should be developed or go to furthermore his own technical ability. So Xenakis GMEEOORH is kind of one of his main concepts to achieve his continuity of sound and the exploitation of organ's capacities and the performance.
And when was the piece written, and how did it reflect the trends of the times or contradict those trends?
Oh, actually, during those times, Xenakis, I mean the 1940 and 50, as you already know, that the serial composers' works were very popular. But as far as I researched, Xenakis didn't like those kind of music, and I think probably this is because he had not had a chance to get a kind of a traditional music education, so he strived to kind of set his foot into the music industry those days. So thanks to the Olivier Messiaen or Nadia Boulanger's advices, he decided to take advantage of his own career things, or the education he had already gotten, like architecture or some philosophy that he really loved to. So that's the kind of a starting point for him to become a composer.
Xenakis' post-secondary studies focused on architecture and engineering, but also included training in harmony and counterpoint. His participation in armed resistance in the Greek Civil War put his safety in jeopardy, and in 1947 he escaped to Paris, where he found a job in Le Corbusier's architectural studio, eventually becoming a lead collaborator on projects such as the Phillips Pavilion at Expo 58. It is perhaps here that Xenakis' unique compositional technique, called arborescences, is born.
So it's kind of a superimposed layers of the music voices. If you look at the score in GMEEOORH by any chance, starting a simple melodic line, but it developed it kind of a different shape, many voices, which led to kind of a superimposed texture. Also, arborescence, Xenakis kind of tried to find some kind of shape theory. So arboresc means like a tree, like bushes or one. You can see, if you can see the tree, there is one branch but develop into different kind of many different kind of ones. So that makes kind of the bush like a shape. But Xenakis' theory about his music said, I really quote what he said, music has to be own its life. It has own rules. So music has own, it should be begin and then end. Not kind of specific rule. Xenakis did not provide it.
But he did create a lot of work using architectural and mathematical techniques, which in some ways could be considered a set of rules, but at the same time there was a lot of freedom in the way he was employing them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. But there, the arborescence is kind of the graphic notation. Yes, at some point you are right. But then music, if you have any chance to read some kind of the conversation, the interview with the conversation, he said the sound can be notated in graphic notation. Not the rule should be not the first thing is the sound, and then he can the kind of shape should be rotated with on the graphic notation. So different augmentation or reduction, those things on the graph. This is why I don't think he has main rule applied note by note or pitch by pitch.
So what he's providing is more like systems, maybe to guide the creation of sound.
Yeah, that multi-layered texture or voice is one of his main feature, and then the other characteristic is that the kind of a sound, like a cluster sound, or what we call in the musical term is like a sound mat, those kind of arborescence can be resulted into sound mass, not different individual, not focusing on individual pitch or the rhythm, not the pattern, just whole sound.
Seeing also what composers write and what is their intention of it. And of course also when you think about Xenakis, what is audible for the audience? So then I got the idea, even if I practice everything, of course, very accurate, very slowly and very, I mean, I love it. Sometimes I feel that it should be played a little bit slowly, even that you hear more what is inside, because it's really exciting. But the main thing, what I think he wants is this energy and this growing. Always he starts from one line. It's like a tree up, like the tree is growing. Maybe it's even it goes very far to the past. If you think the imitation of, for example, an Italian toccata or something, or a fugue, a Bach, or what. You start with one theme, and then it can be imitated or it can be instantly variated. But there's always coming another line, and joining another, and another, and another, and then it grows somewhere. Like when it starts in the middle, then it will go down and up and in all directions.
The composer's willingness to challenge the performer in applying such unusual concepts to music is enough to keep any scholar's imagination busy exploring these synesthetic, creative ideas with study, research, and theory. But what happens when you actually have to perform this work? How does a performer translate and interpret these ideas into actual sound?
Yeah, I tried just to think of what is the effect and what kind of is the idea of the piece. And as I just tried to describe how I feel about this parts which are growing, and so I think in some places there, when there are 5 or 6 lines over each other and very big registration. It's not anymore audible, really, every note, maybe. So that was the reason why I thought, okay, I have 2 weeks, and what I can do is to perform the piece just myself, and I make a version. I wouldn't play it like this on a CD or to record it, but for making clear what this piece is about, I made this version because I didn't have the possibility to work with electronics now, and I hope at least when I saw the reaction of the audience, I think they pretty much catched what this piece is about, like it has to be. And I think very pretty much there's also these big clusters and this changing of sounds. What makes this piece so interesting, and of course then at the end, what we'll call climax of sounds, what this organ, of course, really nicely did. That was a lot of fun. Maybe I even tell you that there's a problem with these clusters. That's why I didn't even think about taking these planks. That when you play a cluster with tutti, with everything on, you cannot even use every. You cannot press every key down. In Paris, it was much better. I could really use both arms, and it sounded quite okay. But for example, at the end, I took the first manual with my left hand, so the whole arm, and then I went to the second manual with my right hand, because I noticed that when I go to the first, it will decrease. Even I had all stops on, it decreases the sound. So I tried to find the maximum sound. Of course, a little bit. I hope that it was audible. He likes to have, because he wants all tremolos, and he wants all, for example, voix celeste, these undulation stops, which make the sound not so clear. You usually leave them out when you play something else. Never use in a tutti, a piano, this kind of stops. But here he really wanted to have all this, and I think the idea was also to make this kind of undulating or how to say, a little bit disturbed. But it should be the loudest what the organ can do.
You're listening to the FutureStops podcast, an initiative of the Royal Canadian College of Organists. My name's Blake Hargreaves, and I'm your host as we explore the world of the 21st century organ. We just heard today's feature piece, GMEEOORH, by Iannis Xenakis, performed by Eun-Joo Ju for her thesis project recital on the Buzzard organ at the Chapel of St. John the Divine in Champaign, Illinois, with organ assistant Michael Leonard. One of Xenakis' only works featuring organ, this piece has nevertheless captured the attention and interest of music lovers, and its reputation consistently grows. The New York Times describes the work as shoehorning every possible color and note the organ can produce into an involving episodic structure. Through its audacious innovation, it seems to represent the expansive quality of the organ itself.
I think Xenakis kind of created works that challenge performers to go beyond their own technical capacities and then the limitation of their instrument. So Xenakis' application kind of a mathematics place. Actually, this is not the exact mathematical approach, but it's kind of his own philosophy of composition will kind of achieve the continuity of this organ just as he did in his other orchestral works. So he just composed only one organ music based on his arborescence. This, in other words, is continuity approach, but he applied the other instruments like a piano or harpsichord and then the other orchestra. I really admire that he extended the possibilities, the organ instrument and then performers.
I find it very important because it's important that composers like Xenakis write for the organ. I cannot say which composer has maybe taken influences from Xenakis. I mean, what is very important is that it's from 74. So when we think about the avant-garde organ music of the 60s, and then it comes quite fast after them. But actually, when you think about the elements of this piece, clusters we had before, also this complexity. I don't know how well known Sorabi is, but if you think of his work, his symphonies for organ, which actually the first one, they are from the 20s and 30s of the last century. But the first performance of the first one, it's 2 hours, and really it's something like Xenakis was played by Kevin Boyer in 83, and actually the second one, which is something like 8 hours, was the premiere of it was in 2010. So I think his significance is more that he really did this kind of piece. But of course, he also stood a little bit in his way, that it was written like this, that it's not possible to play. So maybe it was also not performed so many times.
Xenakis' musical studies took place concurrently with a fascinating life story. Beginning at the National Technical University in Athens, World War II complicated these studies. Xenakis joined the National Liberation Front, and after Axis powers departed, his participation in resistance to the British-supported monarchy in the Greek Civil War led to his involvement in armed conflict, which left him blinded in one eye from an explosion. He graduated in 1947 with a degree in civil engineering, and his subsequent departure to France to escape possible prison or death at the hands of the Greek government left him with feelings of guilt which he said motivated him to devote his life to music to, quote, regain the right to live. He was sentenced to death in absentia. While listening to the piece, this conflict and his life purpose which came out of it seemed to be reflected in GMEEOORH, and while he breaks with cliches and so much of pipe organ tradition, these themes are fitting for an instrument which has supported so much contemplation about the largest questions of life. The enigmatic qualities of this work invoke mystical interpretations, like the fact that it was published in 74 while his exile was in 47. The year GMEEOORH was published is the year the Greek junta finally fell and Xenakis returned to his homeland. We'd like to thank Eun-Joo Ju and Suanne Kujala for joining us today. We'd love it if you would join us too on social media at FutureStops and FutureStops Podcast, where you can bring your voice to the conversation. We're also pleased to announce the launch of our Patreon account, where you can make a contribution to the production of this podcast to keep us going. Visit patreon.com/FutureStops to sign up. FutureStops is a podcast from the Royal Canadian College of Organists, produced by Andrew O'Connor with Sanjay Parker as community manager and executive producer Elizabeth Shannon. I'm your host, Blake Hargreaves.